you stand beside someone you love. They have taken their final breath. Every animal eventually faces death. But very few stop. Very few remember. Very few dig a hole. Long before cities existed, long before farming, and long before writing, someone made a choice that changed humanity forever. They refused to simply walk away. Instead, they stayed. They carried the body. They placed it into the earth. They covered it with soil. That simple act may have marked the moment humans became something entirely new. For millions of years, our ancestors lived much like every other animal. They searched for food. They escaped predators. They raised children. Then they died. Nature usually erased the evidence within days. Bones scattered. Scavengers fed. Life continued. Then something changed. Archaeologists have spent decades searching for the first intentional graves. The answer is surprisingly difficult. Bodies can end up underground naturally. Floods bury them. Caves collapse. Mudslides preserve them. Finding proof of intention requires extraordinary evidence. Researchers look for carefully arranged skeletons. They look for dug burial pits. They look for objects placed beside the dead. Every discovery raises a bigger question. Were these people simply hiding dangerous bodies? Or were they expressing something far deeper? One site in northern Iraq changed that debate forever. Inside Shanidar Cave, archaeologist Ralph Solecki uncovered the remains of several Neanderthals during the 1950s. One skeleton appeared surrounded by ancient pollen. At first, the discovery seemed astonishing. Had Neanderthals buried their dead with flowers? If true, compassion and ritual existed far earlier than anyone imagined. The finding captured the world's imagination. Later studies questioned whether burrowing rodents had carried the pollen into the grave. The flowers might never have existed. Yet the mystery refused to disappear. Because the body itself told another remarkable story. One individual, now known as Shanidar I, had survived devastating injuries. His arm had been badly damaged. He likely suffered partial blindness. His hearing was impaired. His body showed signs of severe disability. Yet he lived for years afterward. Someone fed him. Someone protected him. Someone refused to leave him behind. That discovery transformed how scientists viewed Neanderthals. Perhaps compassion evolved long before our own species appeared. But Neanderthals were not alone. In Israel, at Qafzeh Cave, researchers uncovered some of the oldest known intentional burials of early modern humans. These graves date back roughly 100,000 years. Several skeletons lay in carefully prepared pits. One child was buried holding deer antlers across the chest. No one knows exactly why. The antlers served no practical purpose underground. They suggest symbolism. They suggest intention. Most importantly, they suggest thought reaching beyond death itself. Why place valuable objects where nobody could ever use them again? That question has echoed through archaeology for generations. Perhaps the objects honored the individual. Perhaps they represented status. Perhaps people believed the dead continued another journey. Or perhaps grief simply demanded one final gift. No fossil can answer that question. Bones preserve actions. They cannot preserve beliefs. That silence is one of archaeology's greatest frustrations. Yet every grave whispers the same possibility. Someone cared enough to stop working. Someone spent precious energy digging into hard ground. Someone remained with the dead instead of searching for food. For hunter-gatherers living on the edge of survival, the decision carried enormous cost. Why pay such a price? What could possibly outweigh immediate survival? The answer may lie inside the human brain itself. Anthropologist Ernest Becker argued that awareness of death fundamentally shaped civilization. Humans eventually realized something other animals may never fully understand. Everyone dies. Including me. That realization changes everything. The moment you understand your own mortality, every decision gains a new emotional weight. Love becomes fragile. Time becomes limited. Memory becomes precious. Perhaps burial was never only about the dead. Perhaps it was always about the living. The archaeological record grows stranger from here. As more ancient graves were uncovered, researchers noticed something impossible to ignore. Many of the dead were buried with objects they could never use. Stone tools. Animal bones. Pigments made from red ochre. Shell beads carried from distant coastlines. These were not accidents. Someone deliberately placed them beside the body. Red ochre appears again and again across prehistoric burial sites. Its deep crimson color resembles fresh blood. Some archaeologists believe it symbolized life. Others think it represented rebirth. No one knows for certain. But its repeated appearance suggests that distant groups shared remarkably similar ideas. Could completely separate communities have reached the same conclusion about death, or were these traditions spreading across generations through stories now lost forever? The mystery deepens. At Sungir, in modern-day Russia, archaeologists uncovered one of the most astonishing Ice Age burials ever discovered. 2 children had been buried head-to-head. Their graves contained more than 10,000 ivory beads. Each bead had been carved by hand. Researchers estimate the work required thousands of hours. The children were also buried with ivory spears, fox teeth, bracelets, and intricate ornaments. Why invest such extraordinary effort in those who would never return? The answer cannot simply be survival. It points toward something much larger. Identity. Community. Memory. Perhaps the dead still held value because they remained part of the group. Death ended a heartbeat. It did not end belonging. Similar discoveries appear across continents. Again and again, ancient people interrupted their struggle for survival to honor those who had died. That choice seems irrational at first. Food mattered. Shelter mattered. Safety mattered. Yet burial continued. Evolutionary psychologists have proposed several explanations. One idea focuses on disease. Removing bodies from living spaces reduced the spread of dangerous pathogens. A practical solution became a social tradition. Another theory centers on cooperation. Groups that cared for one another formed stronger social bonds. Individuals who knew they would be protected, even after injury or death, may have trusted each other more during life. Trust created larger communities. Larger communities survived longer. Natural selection may have quietly rewarded compassion. Then there is another possibility. One far more unsettling. Humans possess what psychologists call a theory of mind. We naturally imagine what other people think and feel. That ability helps us cooperate. It also creates a painful illusion. When someone dies, the brain struggles to stop imagining their thoughts. You still expect them to speak. You still picture them smiling. You still feel their presence in familiar places. The mind refuses to update all at once. Could burial have become a way of helping the living accept an impossible reality? A final act. A visible goodbye. A moment when the brain slowly accepts what the heart cannot. Modern neuroscience suggests grief changes the brain in measurable ways. Brain imaging studies show that memories of loved ones continue activating powerful emotional networks long after death. Loss is not simply sadness. It is the difficult process of rewriting countless predictions about the future. Every habit changes. Every expectation shifts. Every familiar place feels different. Perhaps ancient burials served as the first psychological technology. Not to help the dead. To help the survivors. That possibility changes everything. The grave may have been humanity's earliest form of therapy. Not medicine. Not religion. Not government. A ritual designed to carry unbearable emotions together instead of alone. If that is true, then every cemetery on Earth is connected by a tradition stretching back tens of thousands of years. A tradition born from one simple refusal. The refusal to let a life disappear without meaning. And that raises another question. If burial began as compassion, how did it eventually become one of civilization's greatest symbols of power? Kings quickly discovered that death could outlive power. A ruler could lose an army. A ruler could lose a kingdom. But a magnificent tomb could shape history for thousands of years. Burial transformed from a private act of grief into a public display of identity. No civilization embraced this more dramatically than ancient Egypt. The pyramids were never simply giant piles of stone. They were carefully engineered monuments to eternity. The ancient Egyptians believed that preserving the body helped preserve the individual. Tombs became homes. Walls became stories. Every painted scene prepared the deceased for another existence. Thousands of workers spent decades building monuments for a single person. That enormous investment tells us something profound. Death had become part of politics. Memory itself became a form of power. The same pattern appeared elsewhere. In ancient China, emperors were buried with armies of clay soldiers. The famous terracotta army contains thousands of individually crafted figures. Each face is slightly different. Each soldier was created to serve the emperor forever. Across Europe, elite warriors were buried beneath massive earth mounds. Some were placed inside wooden chambers. Others rested beside horses, weapons, jewelry, and imported treasures. Even Viking ships became floating graves pulled onto land. The vessel that once carried a person across oceans now carried them into memory. Every civilization answered death differently. Yet the pattern remained surprisingly consistent. The dead were rarely abandoned. They were remembered. They were honored. They were given a place. Over time, burial became more than tradition. It became evidence of belonging. Families returned to the same graves. Communities gathered in the same places. Ancestors became part of the landscape. The ground itself became history. Archaeologists often reconstruct entire civilizations by studying their cemeteries. A grave reveals age. It reveals diet. It reveals disease. It reveals migration. Sometimes it even reveals social class. The dead often preserve history better than the living. Ancient DNA has transformed this field. Researchers can now extract genetic material from skeletons tens of thousands of years old. Those fragments have rewritten human history. They have traced forgotten migrations. They have revealed unexpected family relationships. They have shown that ancient populations mixed far more often than once believed. In a strange way, the people buried with the greatest care have become our greatest teachers. Their final resting places became libraries. Not of books. Of bones. But the deepest meaning of burial cannot be measured by genetics alone. It lives in the minds of those left behind. Psychologists have found that rituals help people cope with uncertainty and loss. Whether religious or secular, shared rituals reduce stress and create a sense of order during emotional chaos. Burial became one of humanity's oldest shared rituals.